This episode of CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications Podcast, is brought to you by Dynamics 365 User Group. Across the globe, Dynamics 365 User Group members share a common goal of maximizing and advancing the performance of Dynamics 365 customer engagement and finance and operations so that individuals and companies can improve operations, overcome obstacles, and exceed goals. Find out more at d365ug.com. We thank D365UG for sponsoring CRM Audio. Welcome to CRM Audio. I'm Joel Lindstrom here. I'm here with MVP Sukrut Parab. He was with us a few weeks ago talking about the new Wave 2 release for F&O. And joining us this week is Satish Panwar. Satish, since this is the first time on the podcast, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Joel. So my name is Satish Panwar, and I'm with Hitachi Solutions as a solution architect. I have helped numerous customers taking from early on in the pre-sale stage all the way to the go lives. And I have been doing this for last 14 years.
Great. That's great. And on the last episode, we started talking about dual write and some of the other new features that have been released with Wave 2, but we didn't even get halfway through. So we said we need to have another episode to go into that a little bit more detail. And to start with, I think there's still a little bit of confusion out there around the release cadence and, like with the whole platform, some of the things that were announced aren't out yet. Some are already out. So Sukrut and Satish, could you clarify a little bit more what the new release entails and kind of what's out now and what's still to come?
Sure. Yeah. So last year, Microsoft announced that they are going to deliver two major releases per year. One is going to be in April, and another is going to be in October. And and they call it as a major application releases. One of them in April they call it as Wave 1, and the other one in October is Wave 2. So with these application releases, they are offering new capabilities and functionalities, and all the licensed customer must stay current with these updates for their finance and operations applications. These updates are backward compatible, so your apps and customizations will continue to work post updates. There is another thing as well called as breaking changes. With these major releases, if Microsoft wants to release any breaking changes, what is mean by breaking changes? So breaking changes are nothing but major changes in the framework API, which are going to impact majority of the customers. In those cases, Microsoft is going to communicate 12 months in advance so that customers can plan accordingly, and they can such a change will only be, and they can work on it. So ahead of time, 12 months before of time, they are going to notify customers, and customers can work on it accordingly. So these changes are going to be released only during the major update, which is going to happen either in April or in October. So now with these new release plans, every month Microsoft releases platform updates along with these two major application releases, and customers has an option to pause this update up to 4 months. And there is a lot of confusion over here as well here. So if you can pause maximum 3 consecutive service updates through the LCS configurations, and for that in LCS you have to be your LCS or customer LCS administrator can do some configurations on LCS, and they can pause these updates. But if once after this period, the update will be scheduled and auto applied by the Microsoft. So if you are on suppose platform update 29 right now, and Microsoft is releasing suppose platform update 33. So you can be on platform update 30 for as of today, and that gives you 4 months of time. Along with these new platform updates, also Microsoft is releasing some new capabilities ahead of time so that customers can customers can test this new functionality early in the cycle before deploying to their production environment. And see, these new features with major or disruptive changes changes to the user experience are off by default. This means system administrators have to first enable these features for their organization, um, and these features are managed through a new workspace called as feature management. So now, before we go deep dive into what is the feature management workspace is, let's look at the high level about the concept of workspaces, which was released with the initial release of finance and operations. So the workspace is nothing but a centralized place where users can have their reports, transactional forms, and different. So usually users have to navigate to the finance and operations system through the different modules. So workspace, and on day-to-day basis, users have to use different forms, reports, some periodic batch job processes, and all those processes you can have. For all those processes, you have a centralized place, and these workspaces are consist of all these forms or reports, all these and batch job processes, as well as any other transactional processes users are executing on their day-to-day processes. So this feature management is one of the workspaces they introduced recently, which lets you control the features that are delivered in each release. And these features are by default off, and you have to enable those features. Satish is going to do deep dive into what feature management is and how what are the different features available within that workspace.
Okay. So before we get into that, though, how are you advising your customers with that? Since they can delay the updates, are you finding most customers want to delay as long as they can, or some just wanting to get the updates as soon as they're out?
So definitely with my customer, we don't want to be, we don't push. For my customer, we are not pushing to get those updates immediately. Before, we want to do enough testing with our previous experiences. Because of some framework changes, some of our processes broke. So what we do is we usually pause those updates for a couple of months, do the thorough testing, and if the Microsoft is suppose on the platform update 32 currently, so we try to get we try to be on the not on the latest platform, but just maybe a couple of platform before that, whatever the recent version is. So, and do the thorough testing for those updates and then release those updates into production. So in that way, we are not losing the momentum of having on the recent update, and we stay within that timeline.
Okay. And as far as, are you finding that clients want to stay up to date with the new features, or do some of them ignore what the new stuff that's coming until the last minute?
So so these features are so if Microsoft is releasing any platform updates, suppose if we take an example of platform that 31 next month, before releasing that update, they release they post a release notes on their doc sites about the detailed features. So by that looking at those features, we can decide, if we really want these features, and these features are really going to be useful for our business. Based on that, we decide, or we give suggestions to our customers that, okay, this is the platform that we want to be in, because these new features are going to help a business a lot. So based on that, we take a decision and advise customers.
And in some cases, Joel, what we have also seen is Microsoft has this program called First Release, through which they kind of will help customers to take on the early release for some of the customers, and Microsoft kind of maintains your environment and kind of give you kind of a live support, just to make sure that nothing kind of falls apart once it's released in production. Now, of course, before releasing into production, Microsoft is doing a really good job by using automated tools like RSET, so that all the features are thoroughly tested prior to releasing to any customer.
But what are you recommending to people, though? Are you recommending that they have people reviewing those release notes and testing out in the first release in a sandbox environment, before the release happens?
So we
Yes.
would. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the customers can select the designated the tier 2 or UAT or sandbox environments for the update, and then once they and of course they can enable these features in their other than tier 2 environments, which are sandbox or UAT environment. They can enable these features in developer machines or any other machines and test those features. Once customers are comfortable with those features, and they can enable these features in UAT or sandbox, and after that, even after that, we get 7 more days for testing and validations before applying those to the production.
Yeah, that's great. I find it's the modern world we live in, and with all the platforms having these 2 updates a year, sometimes it's a struggle to get people to pay attention to it. But then how do you do it though if you are, because I know F&O deployments generally sometimes take longer than CRM or customer engagement or whatever we call it, the other platform right now. So what do you do about like the releases that come out mid deployment? Do you just delay it as long as you can, or are you having some where you have to update to a new platform before you go live, and how does that impact your testing?
So the way Microsoft delivers these releases are in the form of packages. So it's so if anything new is coming out, it's going to be in a different package than what we apply to our testing environment. So it's always different. So it doesn't impact at all. Even if while we are testing, suppose update. Platform update 30 and Microsoft releases 31, that doesn't impact us because that is going to be a separate package which needs to be applied to a environment, and only that particular environment gets updated with that particular those features. So that's completely independent. So it doesn't even impact what we are currently working on. Satish, do you want to add anything in?
Okay. So you can generally hold that off and not have things coming in midstream then?
Yes.
Okay.
And the kind of best practice is we'll say just to make sure that the release is kind of stable, and few customers have kind of verified it. It's like as Sukrut mentioned, it kind of makes sense to stay at least a version back or a platform back rather than the latest version, in case your operations are kind of complex in nature. If it's all standard AX, which some of customers have started to get into, then it's okay to kind of take the latest releases. But depending upon if it's a supply chain operations kind of a environment, then we may want to pause those updates, make sure that everything is kind of validated, tested, and then only take it. But the good thing with all these platform updates coming out is that it kind of keeps customer engaged, so that they don't have to go for once a year kind of a thinking, okay, let's upgrade to the next version, and it's a big bang project. Microsoft is kind of making sure that all customers kind of stay on current release. That's why they only allow to pause the updates for three or 4 times, and then you have to move on.
Makes sense. So Satish, let's get into some of the best practices for feature management. So you mentioned, and this is consistent with other areas of the business application platform, that generally the new features are turned off by default and you opt into them when you're ready. So how are you, what are some best practices that you're recommending to your clients around feature management?
So, first of all, just to kind of help understand why did feature management actually came. This is to help support all these platform updates because Microsoft is moving at a fast pace, releasing these new features, which might impact forms or user interface. So to make sure that users all of a sudden don't start to see when these see changes on the forms. When this platform gets updated, that's what kind of bring in this feature management workspace concept. From a best practice perspective, we would recommend that these features get enabled in your in your test environment or your UAT environments. Make sure users are kind of comfortable with these features. They have thoroughly tested, and if these features kind of touch any other area. So say, for example, if a feature is released under bank management, make sure that the associated processes are not broken either. And once it's thoroughly tested, then feature management does come with a data entity. So depending upon if it's just one or two features that you are kind of turning it on in your environment, then you can manually schedule those features in your production environment after the update is enabled. However, if you are turning on, say, for example, 30 different features, it's very kind of difficult to kind of go and do this manually for each and every feature because the feature list may be really long. So Microsoft provides out of the box feature management data entity that kind of lets you take an extract from one of your environment and then push it into your production environment. So it's more like a spreadsheet kind of comes out of one environment, which you can use to kind of enable other features in your production environment. So that's the kind of a best practice to move features from one environment to another environment.
Okay, that makes sense. So as far as testing the features out, generally, do people test them out for a certain amount of time? I can imagine if you have something that's in your roadmap that is really important to you, and then you see that feature come out, some you're probably more eager to get that feature rolled out.
Correct. So typically I will say a week is a good time, and Microsoft have different programs. So one of the program is P program, to which customers and partners can be part of. It's an insider program from Microsoft. So that kind of even gives you much more insight into what's actually is there in the feature management. And if there are any initial issues, people try to kind of come up with those issues, and Microsoft is actively working to help fix those. But once it's out, you kind of start to get on those features right away. And once you have verified it, then you kind of release it. A week is a good time. The one thing that we have been kind of struggling is, even though with feature management comes standard documentation, but sometimes the standard documentation is very high level, whereas when you look at a specific feature, it has so much details. And we kind of start to see this, in some of the big functionalities. In some cases, if a feature is being released, Microsoft kind of puts in 4 lines of documentation around it. And then the feature needs to be explored by the partners and the customers.
So what are some of the new features available for feature management, and what are some of the things that are yet to come?
So few good things that we have seen is, in the financial side, a lot of features have been released. So we'll talk in more in detail, but some of the good features include, canceling a bank reconciliation, which users are having issues. There are so many features released for data management, history cleanup, attachments recovery is another feature, unlock journals. So it's a long list. that Microsoft kind of keeps coming up with.
Yeah, and that list increases on monthly basis, so there is no ending for that list. So a lot of features are released every month. Probably the next month is nothing is going to come out, but after January, then mostly the new features are which are in the pipeline and which are released as a part of which are part of a Wave 2. That big giant PDF. Those features are planned in the upcoming months after a new year.
So are the features all generally available, or do they have the idea of a preview feature like we have in customer engagement?
Yes, we have preview features. Before releasing any update, Microsoft releases the preview version for whoever is signed up for the PEEP program. As Satish discussed earlier, that's a private program where you have to sign up, and Microsoft is going to provide you the preview features a month advance before making that as a generally available. So yeah, definitely, if you are signed up for that program, you can get those features early. You can explore those features. You can provide a feedback for those features, and of course, if you want to use those features, of course, and there is a possibility that Microsoft can, when they release this for the preview version, and when they make it generally available, there is a chance that they can change that feature, based on the feedback they get. So that's another possibility.
And in some cases, we have also seen some of the preview features in the GA release. So there were few. There was a feature that kind of came out with respect to the aging enhancement. So it's still a preview feature, but it got released, and then customers have the ability to kind of turn it on and off. So it's more or less like a switch. It's not through the feature management workspace, but it's more controlled through the module parameters. But we have seen some deviations that not everything kind of get released through feature management. It's mostly to manage the user interface. Those things kind of definitely get released through feature management right now.
And another good feature you know about is dual write, right? It's been in preview since last 4 or 5 months, I think, and it's still not. There is no clarity on when it is going to be generally available, because there are a lot of things going on with that. A lot of enhancement, a lot of new features are still coming in the preview for dual write, right? So and
so when you got a feature like dual write that's a preview feature, are you advising clients not to use that in production, or would you have a place where you would consider using a preview feature in production if it meets the requirement?
So far, I haven't done any deep research on the dual write. I just, for my own exploration purpose, I just use the dual write feature. So based on that, I'm right now, there is no recommendation from my side about using that in production, but definitely as and when we do more research and do more analysis and find out how exactly it's going to fit customer requirement, based on that, maybe in future we'll see about using that feature or recommending that feature to the customers.
So at this point, Joel, we would say preview features. If you have tested it, you are comfortable, you can obviously reach out to Microsoft. You cannot turn on the feature in your production environment anyway, but you can reach out to Microsoft and see if they kind of will allow you to be the first release customers, or will give you some kind of a discount depending upon how much benefit you are going to get out of it. But obviously, they would require that you have done a good testing. You have, you need to provide a lot of proof in case you are comfortable with the feature. But then also it has to go through Microsoft team before it can be released in any shape and form in your production environment.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So
One
Yes,
more feature is about this feature management is turning off the feature. So by chance, in any chance you users have verified the feature, and even after going into production, is we are facing some issues. So there are some features which you can turn off through this feature management workspace as well. And the enable disable button, if the button is definitely if enable yeah, for disabling those features, then you can disable those features. But that's also one of the good features to turn off the features if you want to.
correct. And in some cases, Microsoft kind of gives you the options as well. So when you kind of try to turn on a feature, if the feature cannot be turned off for any reason, as suggested by Microsoft, so user gets a prompt which user have to specifically provide confirmation that we understand that this cannot be turned off once turned on, because it kind of manipulates so many things in the background. But most of the features that we have seen can be turned off if needed.
So what's the status of like backup and restore with F&O environments now? Do we have point in time backup and restore, or is
Yes.
that more of a manual process now?
Yeah, we have a point in time backup and restore. So you can do point in time restore to any of your sandbox environment. And LCS provides that ability where you can just go click button and do point in time restore. So it's very easy.
So let's say that I accidentally deployed a feature to my production environment, and then I realize, oh, we can't have this. What are our options for rolling it back?
If we enable those features through this feature management, and if we can disable through that, then there is that option is very quick, like turning off the feature through feature management workspace. But if the feature is kind of customized feature, which is deployed using deployable packages, then definitely we need a downtime to apply those new deployable packages by remove. So the deployable packages are going to be we have to remove that feature, generate new packages, and deploy those packages. So for that purpose, the downtime is needed.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So anything else that people need to be aware of, or you want to get the word out about either the Wave 2 or the new approach for managing the features?
So to manage the features would be, we kind of talked at length, that they first of all verify all these features in dev environment, in their test environment, UAT environment, and then only push them to production. However, there is an exception that Microsoft made, and one of the big functionalities kind of got released outside feature management, and there is a big disclaimer from Microsoft that we try to release all the new enhancements or features through feature management. However, this is an exception, and that exception is revenue recognition.
Okay.
The reason.
So did we not have revenue recognition before? We just didn't recognize revenue?
We were recognizing
it. Yeah, but we were providing custom solutions to the customer for this revenue recognition solution. But Microsoft has now have their own module for this particular feature.
And from a revenue recognition perspective, we were recognizing revenue, but how we were recognizing revenue is what kind of made difference. There was not a functionality on how to defer revenues, which customers want depending upon the industry the customer is in. So they may want to defer revenue until the contractual obligations are met. And we have had customers wherein the customers definitely want to defer revenue because the contractual obligations are like 12 months. In some cases, we have seen 60 months contract being signed that this is what we will deliver on a monthly basis. We end up building a custom revenue recognition module that kind of help stay this customer up with their revenue recognition requirements, because it was must from their audit's perspective.
So with a feature like revenue recognition, where we've had custom solutions to do this, is the first release of revenue recognition complete for most customers, or is it the kind of thing where this is version 1 and they'll be enhancing it?
Yeah, so the minimum version required for this release is it's released in 10.0.5, and so if you are on older version, you are not going to get this functionality, and this functionality has to be enabled. So the feature management workspace doesn't provide this functionality as well. This functionality has to be enabled through the configuration key features, which is in finance and operations we have a configuration form which manages most of what features needs to be enabled and disabled. So this particular feature has to be enabled and disabled through the configuration keys. So, and these configuration keys are you cannot turn those. So in earlier versions, we have ability to just check or uncheck the checkbox for the configuration key, and the feature get disabled, added, or removed from the application, right? But with the new new finance and operations, we have to put our application under maintenance mode first, then enable those features, and then put back our environment from maintenance mode to the regular mode, and then use these features. So these features are managed. So especially this revenue recognition feature is managed through the configuration key, and there are multiple ways to enable these through the by using the maintenance mode. So either we can directly use the SQL statement or command prompt to enable those features through the configuration key, and after doing that, the revenue recognition module, you will be prompted to with the message that this revenue recognition feature is enabled, and then start using this feature. There are different other things needs to be set up as well in order to use this feature. So
sure, okay, but I'm talking about, is the functionality complete? Meaning, does it completely address most revenue recognition scenarios, or are there still some types of revenue recognition in some industries or types of accounting that you need to enhance it with third-party solutions or customization?
So at this point, we have done a deep dive. I think this kind of suffice, what customers were looking for. What we still need to understand is, when Microsoft released this, they released kind of a different flavors within revenue recognition. So there are a lot of setups that are in there, and depending upon what is set up, it kind of works completely different. So we understand some of it, we don't understand a part of it, and we are still trying to put our learning hat on to understand where those revenue recognition features would be used. But based on what we have seen so far, and based on what we have done for our customers, it looks like a good fit. And we'll be kind of start demoing these revenue recognition module to the existing customers, and see if they are willing to kind of move away from those custom functionalities and move on to the standard revenue recognition that is provided by Microsoft.
So if you have a custom approach to doing it, and then suddenly there's a standard way of doing it, is it the kind of thing where you would turn on the new feature and kind of do it in parallel in both for a while and then make the transition? How would you envision somebody would make the switch from a custom revenue recognition solution to Microsoft's first-party solution?
This is something like this is going to be tricky. But we definitely won't be able to run both the solution in parallel. What that means is that this is going to require in-depth testing of, first of all, the new revenue recognition module, which can be done in a standalone environment, just so that the custom functionality that we have created does not kind of impact whatever Microsoft came up with. Once customer is comfortable with the new functionality, then we have to put together a game plan wherein we have to see what all code changes now we need to kind of take out from the existing code base, and make sure that the new revenue recognition will kind of get turned on. This would involve a lot of planning, because not only we have to kind of disable it from a UI perspective, that the custom functionality doesn't get triggered, but we also need to kind of think about how are we going to take all the data that is already in the system and make sure that we can still report on top of it, along with whenever the new feature gets turned on, where exactly that is going to store data. So how the data mashup will happen. There are a lot of orders for which we have already kind of deferred revenue. Now we need to kind of think about what are our options to make sure that once we turn off the functionality of the old custom revenue recognition module, how do we go about making sure that the deferred revenue at some point will be recognized with the help of new revenue recognition module. So there is a lot of planning. It's going to be a big effort to begin with, but once it's all kind of figured out, planned out, we'll get this tested in the UAT environment, and then comfortably roll it out to the production environment. But long term, this is going to benefit customers because there is one less thing to worry about whenever Microsoft kind of releases any changes. It's like you're using standard vanilla environment. If we can get rid of customizations, now is the time to go.
Yeah, that sounds great. What else are we excited about?
So, revenue recognition does come with a lot of flavors. So one of the flavor that we have, we talked about, briefly touched about is deferred revenue. Very simple setup, and we have posted blogs on LinkedIn and MS Dynamics World as well, wherein we talk about it's a series that kind of talks about series part one is more about how do you kind of turn on the features as Sukrut mentioned, through configuration keys. What are the steps? How you kind of go about it? The next articles kind of talk about deferred revenue. What are the setups required? Then we do talk about we are still writing another topics in the same series and try to see what is the concept of revenue price, how that would kind of work with revenue recognition. And all these features that are coming out with this revenue recognition is kind of helping the Microsoft Dynamics finance and operations comply with GAAP principles and IFRS principles, so that customers kind of stay compliant to these big principles. Another, in addition to revenue recognition, there are a few other things. So printing enhancements is something that came out. Sukrut, you want to talk about printing enhancements that recently came out?
Yeah, sure. So, what was it like before printing, and how is it better?
So the printing enhancement is about the new embedded viewer control Microsoft has released. So in earlier versions, if whenever we print any document, so users what usually do print document, print any report on the screen. If everything looks okay, print it directly on the printer. But sometimes what you see actually on the screen and what it prints is different. So with this new printing enhancement, with new embedded control, whenever you print reports from finance and operations, it opens that particular report in the new control, embedded viewer control. And the improvements are So the differences we used to see in earlier versions between actual print and whatever we see on the screen, they try to minimize those, try to minimize or completely remove those differences, and what you see on the screen is what you get on the printer. Any additional comments, Satish?
Yes. So so one of the other issues that we ran into earlier is whenever something was printed, we have to first print it on the screen, then download it, and then print it, say for example, on our local printers. So the big benefit that came out of this embedded viewer control is you print it on the screen and you just hit print like you print from a Word document. All your local printers that are connected in your network, they have to be kind of local. It's not a network printer. That support is not there yet, but it kind of allows you to print directly, so you don't have to kind of download and go through these certain hoops to kind of print something. And one thing, Sukrut, that you kind of touched upon in detail is what you see on the screen versus what gets printed. The classic example that we have seen is, in some cases, developers have spent, say, for example, a week worth of effort trying to make sure the check settings are aligned, try to print it on their printer. Everything looks good. And then when you move it to a different printer, the settings are aligned, the settings are changed. So this kind of gives you much better control to kind of just print it on the regular printer, and we see this will really benefit check printing the most, because that's where all the alignments, especially if the check is pre-printed, the alignment kind of gets off. So we definitely kind of see this feature being really helpful in managing those check reports.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other types of printing besides check printing that your customers typically are doing a lot of?
Reports get printed a lot, but they typically get printed. In some cases, either the invoices are being mailed, but we see a lot of customers, with the recent release and all the benefits that Microsoft have now provided. It's like the printing is kind of getting obsolete from finance and operations. It's more towards emailing those documents out to customers. But in some cases, say for example, like collection letters is where the printing will get used, because collection letters are can be sent electronically, but also mailed as well. So that's where we see in some cases inventory reports might get printed.
Mostly warehousing labels and all those things, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of us have personally don't print as much as we used to, but with F&O, it's one of the last places people are still doing a lot of printing, especially when you need checks printed. It's very important.
Correct.
Are you seeing people? You mentioned people are printing a lot of reports. Are you seeing people moving more to Power BI and other online reporting tools, or are you still seeing a lot of old-fashioned printed reports?
We are seeing more folks now moving towards analytics, and Microsoft has kind of put in so much effort to make the analytical space much better as it used to be. So customers are definitely leveraging the embedded Power BI analytics that comes with the standard environment deployment, and then also leveraging the Power BI version, which is kind of enabled through BYOD, which is bring your own database. And now Microsoft is taking it even further by integrating finance and operations data directly into the Azure Lake.
Yeah. So we are going over there, but it's not fully integrated yet. But yeah, Microsoft is making great investments going in that directions, and with the basically the out of the box version provides the embedded Power BI experience, and as Satish said, to make it further, as a further improvement, you can directly export your finance and operation data to your own data lake, and you can, after exporting that, you can connect your external system from the other data from the external systems in that data lake. You can do reporting out of your own data lake. So there are a lot of features, exciting features are going to come in regards to reporting.
And
okay.
Joel, one thing that you asked about is, are folks still printing it? We kind of see them getting away, and the decision kind of comes from higher management, because what we have seen earlier is, say, for example, there is an inventory on-hand report. You have so many SKUs, somebody would, kind of print it on a screen, then rather than analyzing it, it's like export, print it to a printer, and then you have those 100 pages that get printed, or something with respect to your orders that gets printed. Folks kind of take it, but with all this analytical space, first of all, what we have seen is folks did printed those 100 pages report, but when we kind of countered them with questionnaires like, do you analyze these 100 pages? The answer in most of the cases is no. It's there to support, help answer. And now that Microsoft is moving more towards analytics, and with the web version that came with finance and operations, a lot of those things are kind of dying down. The printing is getting less and less as far as finance and operation is concerned.
Yeah, that's kind of consistent across the board. But I think there will always be, at least in the near term, there will always be a need to print. So I'm glad that Microsoft is giving some attention to the legitimate needs to still be able to print reports out. So, Sukrut and Satish, it's been a great conversation. We're running to the end of our time here, but I know you've written some blog posts. You mentioned MS Dynamics World, and I think there's also some LinkedIn posts that you've had. You'll be providing me with links to those. I'll be sure to put those in the show notes so everybody check that out. But Satish, what's the best way if people want to follow you? What's the best way to follow you?
So two ways. One is, folks can find me on LinkedIn with name Satish Panwar, and we'll provide you the link. So that's one way of kind of finding it, more from a professional connection. In addition to that, I'm very much active on the community, Dynamics community as well, and recently have been featured in or have been featuring in Community Stars for last 6 to 8 months. So those are two things, two places where folks can kind of follow us.
And Sukrut, I think you were named MVP after your last appearance on here. So how has your life changed since you became an MVP?
Yeah, a lot of change. Definitely, and definitely get different benefit. A lot of new contacts. Going to get lot of new things to work on, get a lot of new opportunities, to speak, to produce, and also it gives more encouragement to produce more, so that community can get benefited from it. So definitely it's a plus, and definitely the next thing is looking forward for a MVP Summit. I heard about it in the past. It's a great event. So, and going to meet a lot of new people over there and connect with the existing ones, which I know.
That'll be awesome. Yeah, we'll have a whole Hitachi Solutions section there, so that'll be great.
Yep.
All right, well, Satish and Sukrut, appreciate your time and for filling us in. And again, check the show notes for the links. And thanks for listening to CRM Audio.